I believe should be, I don't know if it was circulated, Cindy, or if that was my responsibility. I can share it right now with everybody. Oh, good, thank you.
Yeah. I typically
and then
try to get it sent out, but this week has been a little crazy.
it's okay. It's okay. I'm mostly imagining this. The main business that I would like to take care of at today's meeting is sort of figuring out some modes for responding to public interest, because we have been getting some inquiries, both on the email and through the form on the website. So that was kind of the first thing that I wanted to take a look at, and I added. Cindy sent me, and then I could not figure out how to print these, Cindy. It like would not let me download them or print them. I could only add it to Google Drive. So there may be some permissions issues there. Good morning, Jonathan. Nice to see you. But I thought we could just take a look. I can share my screen and we could just take a look at, there was only kind of like maybe 8 or 10 of these that came through. I don't know if people had a chance to look at them, and I will confess that I have not looked at them in great depth. But basically, people who filled out the form on the website, we have some information about them who expressed interest in this committee, or this subcommittee rather. And then we also got a couple of emails to the engagement list, I think 1 or 2. So I wanted to make sure that we had a workflow in place for like how we were going to respond to those. I think mostly it's just been like, I want to be involved sort of messages. So, and I thought that this would be a good opportunity to sort of revisit the questions that we were thinking about in our last meeting about what's the proper size of the committee. Do we want to have a core group of commissioners and then sort of working at an executive level, and then, sort of community members, so that we could expand the sort of membership of the subcommittee a little bit more broadly. So those are some of the things that I'd like to kind of talk about today. And then we can use that information to move back into making some updates to our action plan. And also revisit some of the things that I think we're actually already starting to do on that action plan, and have some reports back from all of you on anything that you may have done that relates to the work of this committee, and think about some next steps moving forward. Hi, Merle. Good morning. Oh, and Kathy's here too. Great. We're getting people. Awesome. So let me bring up sorry, I have to get to the right Google account here. Great. Great. Hi, Kathy. Glad you could join us. So Cindy has dropped in the chat a couple of links, both to the agenda and also to I think that's probably a link to the folder where the expressions of interest came from. So we have, and if it's easiest, I can just share my screen. Would that be useful to everyone? Yeah, okay, let me do that. Here we go. Okay, so we received 10 expressions of interest in this subcommittee, which Cindy wonderfully sort of prepped for us in individual kind of like applications. So one was just an email expression of interest from Ann Guernsey at Webb Dean Stevens. And then we had, I think, several submissions that came in through the form on the website where people can express interest in certain subcommittees of the commission. So we've received 10 of these. I don't know if it makes sense to kind of look at each of them in turn, or have a bigger conversation sort of at the top level about sort of how we might like to involve people who express interest. whether we want to include them on the subcommittee, whether we want to have them as kind of like people we can activate with subcommittee work. And I don't know if you have information, Cindy or Mike, from what other subcommittees are doing as these interest surveys are coming in. But I'd like to kind of get a sense of at least the folks here, what their feelings are in terms of how we want to utilize these people who have expressed interest, and to what extent we want to involve them in like the actual meetings and work of the committee. So
Yeah, so I can give a little bit of insight. This subcommittee has definitely had the most interest. So that is part of it. Education has taken the 1 or 2 people on board that have expressed
Yeah.
interest. I think they're looking at it from us because they already have a very large subcommittee. They have about 30 people.
Yeah.
So, and I think that eventually they're going to split up into smaller groups and work on more project-based activities.
Okay.
So I think it really depends on what our subcommittee goals are in terms of what we're hoping to accomplish,
Yeah.
and how much we're hoping these folks will work versus, I don't know, advise, I guess.
Yeah.
We have the ability to, so we have an advisory council framework. We haven't really started to figure out exactly how we'll use them, but any non-voting members of the commission will technically be part of that advisory council. So the 27 people who are not part of the commission who are on the education subcommittee are technically part of that advisory council.
Okay.
So if we want to accept anybody with interest and then put them in that holding space and maybe only bring them in for 1 or 2 of our subcommittee meetings, or there's a lot of flexibility in terms of how we would like to use them, and in that case where we can put them, whether on the actual committee or elsewhere.
Okay, that's helpful.
Okay.
Thoughts from the group, and I'm thinking in particular of the fact that at our last meeting, I think looking at our action plan, we did not feel like it made sense to make the committee enormous, the subcommittee enormous. But I'd like to hear, given the fact that there's a lot of interest in participating in one way or another in the work of this committee, which I think is very gratifying and good, because there's a lot of work that we need to do. And it's not really surprising since it's sort of outreach and engagement. I would welcome thoughts from other commissioners on how to best handle this. Because if we're going to be getting like, 10 interest, and I don't know, I mean, this may just be like the survey went out and we had a lot of people and we'll get no more interest. But, if there continues to be sustained interest in the committee, you could imagine that, and we decide to take everyone on, that could lead to a rather unwieldy size.
Yeah, I completely hear what you're saying, Amherst, and I think it's just, if you look at it in different modes of communication, so maybe it's difficult to facilitate that many people in our regular meetings, because otherwise it'll just turn into people just talking to a lot of others rather than actually engaging in conversations. But maybe within those groups, we can identify specific roles of expertise that might be helpful for specific topics that we might be discussing. So invite them in for those meetings, but maybe otherwise opening up another channel of communication to them, like through an email trail or other opportunities to keep conversations and communication open.
Yeah, great. So you could imagine sort of like thinking about tagging people in kind of different categories, especially as we look a little bit more closely at these interest surveys, and then sort of like activating like the historic preservation people, or the like, kind of local, whatever it might be. And then having maybe kind of like a subcommittee I don't, not really newsletter, but like, like email list that's like folks interested in the work of the subcommittee, where we could, offer, more targeted meeting updates and opportunities for, here's what we need done. Does anybody want to help with this? Is that kind of what you're envisioning then, Kathy?
You summarized it great. Thank you.
Great. Yeah. Other suggestions for approaches? Does Kathy sound good to folks, or do we have other ideas? Andy?
I think that all sounds great. Forgive me if I missed this part. When people fill out the form, do they get some kind of email? Are they hearing from the committee at all when they've written?
So they receive a generic thank you for filling out the form, but that's all they've received to date.
I think we might want to, and Cindy, thank you for setting that up. Maybe we can add a sentence to that generic thing that just says, like, in the fall of 2023, we're working on building out our procedures, and you can expect to hear from us, soon. Just so someone knows that they've actually, we want to assure you that we've received your, this is a form letter, but there are real people that have read your letter, and we're looking forward to making an advisory committee and to engaging everybody with their whatever. In the meantime, trust that you'll get an announcement in advance of the next meeting, or here's our meeting schedule. Just something so it feels real.
Yeah.
In the not that we have to write an individualized response, but they should get a real response, I think, that gives them a next step.
Is there a way to customize that though, Cindy, with the form, depending on what they select? I'm not sure there's that kind of logic in a Google form.
But I think even giving them like the next meeting date or something, might be, if you have a pressing concern or idea, please email these people. Otherwise, there's a meeting with public comment at this time. And as we get more organized, you can expect to hear back from us based on, whatever, something like that.
Yeah. I should be able to add that, no problem, and kind of refer them to that October 12th meeting, or not October 12th. This is October 12th, October 18th for the full commission.
Or even here's a link to the meeting schedule. That way you don't have to forget, and they, just a web link.
That's smart.
Yeah, that's nice. And I'm happy to, reach out to the folks who have expressed interest so far, just to say, like, hey, we know you're expressed interest in this committee, or, and basically say what you said, Andy, so that people know that we are aware of their interest. Okay. Look at that. There's animation in the reactions now. There's like a fist first. Anyway, solidarity with that idea. Other thoughts or ideas on at least this sort of initial response to folks? Just want to make sure everyone has an opportunity to give input.
Where does this fit in with Denise's plan about having a contact in every municipality? I wonder if, because I was looking at some here and people are like, I'm involved in this area, or I'm from this town, I'm on this commission, I'm on 2 boards. Like maybe that's one way it's geographical too. I don't know. That's the only thing I can see. That's the only question I have about that kind of building that network.
I'm collecting the information to track what towns people are responding from. There is hesitation to just let anybody volunteer to lead a local commission. So I have not just handed over the reins to anyone, but when people say if there's a town where I know there are already people working on it, I've been connecting them.
Oh, great.
And then, or if I get multiple responses from the same town, I've been putting them in touch with one another, like no leader, but here's the other people in your town who are interested in this.
So you're already doing the work of this subcommittee. Awesome, Cindy.
Want to connect those people that we've identified as like on commissions or something like that have contacted us as, do we want to connect them to the commission through this group in kind of the same way Andy was talking about, like, here's our meetings, here's what we're doing, send us what you're doing or something like that? Is this, I guess that's, is this a logical place to just kind of make that connection, not bring them onto the subcommittee, but have that kind of communication relationship and that network building to say, here's the outreach things the commission's doing that we're aware of, or that we know is going on in the state. So I'm wondering if this is, something like that too, how to handle inquiries, if it's like you're doing, Cindy, like that's maybe what we do. I don't know. That's just, that was just where I was coming from.
Well, I think it certainly makes sense to, and I don't know, what, we'd probably work with you, Cindy, to set this up, maybe. So it's coming from the community organizational engagement, email. But if we had an email list, presumably everyone who's expressed interest in the subcommittee should probably get added to an email list where we share updates on what we're doing at the bare minimum.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what was that, Doug?
Just some sort of blast list kind of thing.
Yeah. And where we can do that kind of, as Kathy was suggesting, sort of we talked about this at our meeting, we're looking for folks to do this, are you interested? Here's a way to get involved. Opportunities for actually doing some work for us.
Yeah, I think that sounds great. I think I'll look into what the best way is to create that list. We're using MailChimp to communicate out, but I don't know if that's what we need for this, or if this should be more of
just an email
something
from
different. So I'll look into what our options are.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I'm thinking more it being just from that subcommittee email that goes to all of us, so we can keep, if people reply to it, we can see as commissioners, who's interested in doing what and what kind of a response we're getting. So I can work with you, Cindy, to kind of talk about the what that will look like logistically. But certainly I think it makes sense to have a list of folks that we want to reach out to. Okay. So it sounds like basically we're not necessarily inviting these people to join the subcommittee as such, but that the consensus is more, we would like to, and perhaps we could designate certain meetings on our schedule. I mean, we're meeting pretty frequently, we're meeting monthly. So, maybe once a quarter or something like that, we have a bigger meeting where the folks who have expressed interest can come and participate more fully. Does that seem like something that we might want to do? Okay. Okay. And then, so do we have my instinct would be to invite people, let's see, the next meeting of this commission is subcommittee is right before the next. Is that right?
So we have, Doug said we have September 14th and October 12th.
October 12th, which is right before the next commission full meeting on the 18th. So maybe we want to have the November meeting, a kind of open subcommittee meeting. Does that make sense? So it'll be after the next sort of big commission meeting. We might have updates and more information for folks. Okay. Because I could put that in an email to folks who reach out. Okay. The third thing here, if we feel like we've kind of got a handle on at least a plan for, I can send an email to the folks who have expressed interest with that information, an invitation to come to the November meeting, information about the meeting schedules, and then also, because is anybody able to join these, Cindy, members of the public? Does that Zoom information go up, or they're just recorded?
So I will say that they are recorded. The Zoom link is up. We had the first person join a subcommittee meeting yesterday. And it is very difficult to track whether they're actually a subcommittee member or not.
Okay.
And kind of, because it's a meeting, they can unmute themselves and participate as they see free. So I am working on doing what other state meetings do, which is live streaming to YouTube and including that link on the website so that people can view and comment, but not necessarily participate live in the meeting. So that for the next series of subcommittee meetings will be in place.
Okay, great. But right now, so it's not like a situation where anyone can just get the Zoom link. But it is now, but it won't be.
It is right now, but it won't be moving forward.
Okay, got it. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah.
Okay. The third thing that I had on just sort of this responding to public interest was figuring out a process or a workflow for responding to the emails that come to us at that subcommittee email address. So looking at this right now, did I not share that? Hold on. It was when I share with the yeah, I shared it with the that folder with the subcommittee. So as long as you're accessing it through your, make everybody an editor, that's fine. Your commission Google account, you should be able to see all of that stuff. But if that continues, sorry, I'm just seeing a couple of Mike, are you on that? Trying to.
I believe so. I'll double check.
Okay.
I have access to the drive and all that stuff.
Oh, you do? Okay, all right. Sorry, I just received 2 share requests. So I just wanted to make sure
Oh,
people
yeah,
were
no,
able.
it depends
be
what
able to
browser I'm
access.
using. When I'm logged
Yeah.
into, it is a pain in the ass.
No, okay. Just making sure that everyone can actually, I've been trying to make sure that the permissions are appropriate for everything that I'm sending out, that that at least the folks on this subcommittee can see everything that they're supposed to. Apologies for that technical hiccup. So just looking at, so we had received basically one email that really was an expression of interest. It was from Ann Guernsey at Web Dean Stevens. But it just sort of raises the question of how we want to, like, do we want to designate a person who is responsible for responding to emails? Do we want to designate like if we suddenly get a bunch of emails, like we don't want them to be languishing because no one is responding. So it would be nice to be able to distribute this labor, but I also am aware that, you know, no one at this table is being remunerated for serving on the commission, and
You're not?
I don't know how. No, I don't
I'm being
know.
paid a lot for this. I don't know what's up with you people.
Does anyone have suggestions? Do we think it's better to designate one person to respond to all emails, or do we think that there is a way to come up with a way of distributing that work? Like switch month to month on who's like the point person for responding to inquiries, or other suggestions that you may have for making that a little more equitable in terms of who's doing the labor.
I'm all for sharing it, but I don't know the mechanism of how best to do it.
Okay. We could do like a handoff, like at each meeting. Like I'm willing to basically take field emails that come in between now and the next meeting. And then at the next meeting, we could designate the next person. We could just go through commissioners alphabetically, or, you know, however we want to do that. That would be one mechanism that I could propose that might shift things around, but do it in a way where, you know, the person knows they're responsible and then decides that like that month they're going to be good about actually checking this email address.
Maybe what you could do is draft a schedule of, you know, try doing it alphabetically, but then this way, if somebody knows, oh, I'm going to be away for a period of time during that period, maybe I could swap. We could do that.
Great. All right. So I'll work up an alphabetical schedule that I can circulate, and then we can review at the next meeting and just make sure that if we need to adjust or swap people, we can do it at the next meeting. Great, that's done. Look, we did item 1 on the agenda is taken care of. Okay, so I'm gonna take it for this, like until the next meeting and respond to folks. And if I have questions about the best way to respond, I will reach out to the rest of the subcommittee. But until then, I will just try and, I'm gonna imagine that most of the inquiries are gonna be like, how do I get involved? So.
And I will also say that we can use the Google Groups feature to respond to these emails. And in that view, it's a little
Mm.
easier to see what's come in rather than just going through an inbox. And
Okay, so that, is that
happy
in
to show you.
spaces?
Groups.
Where's groups?
Go to the waffles and then,
Oh,
I do like that you call it the
Yeah.
waffles. And then it's this groups one
okay.
that should be here.
Okay, no, I see the groups, sorry.
I don't think you'll have all of them, but you should be able to click on engagement
Yeah.
and then see the things that came directly.
Oh, okay, great. Great, okay, so we had two basic, these other two from Cindy and me are not related. Great, okay, excellent. That is great. Actually, maybe one of the things that we could schedule for the next meeting, Cindy, is just a little thing on like how to use that to respond to emails.
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Wow, I'm making the agenda for the next meeting. Isn't that awesome? How to use groups. Love it when I can do work in a meeting for another meeting. And then Cindy isn't hounding me. Where's your agenda? Okay. Does anybody have anything else on the sort of responding to public interest part of the agenda before we move on? Okay, great. So I will go back to our action plan. Here we go. Let me share my screen and we can take a look at that together again. So it seems like basically we're still happy with keeping the subcommittee small. And then I think that maybe we just want to have, basically we've said, well, I don't know how many people are already on this subcommittee. I feel like I should know this off the top of my head. However many are here. And then commissioners then utilize folks who express interest or are invited to assist, include quarterly in meetings. And then I think that what I wanted to, Cindy, could I ask for an update on where, I know that Denise is perhaps doing some of this work of doing outreach, and I know there's been work in terms of site visits and other work. Do you have any updates on, we had talked about like a presentation. I know that Denise has developed something. I thought she was on this subcommittee, but maybe I'm totally wrong. She is not.
She is a member of all of the subcommittees.
Okay.
I think it's been a struggle in terms
Okay,
of
yeah.
scheduling.
Yeah.
I
I can see that.
as someone who has been sitting in on all of the meetings,
Yeah.
it's a lot of time.
Yeah.
So I will say that we have gotten a list of all of the CEOs of towns for selectmen and mayors.
Okay.
And are looking to send an email to them about the committee in the next 1 to 2 weeks. And then use that as an opportunity to put in front of them the idea of nominating or informing us of anybody who might be leading a local group. In addition to that, I think what we
Okay.
will need help with after we send that email is reaching anybody that has not responded. Because I am sure that we'll get a response from maybe 10% of people that we
Okay.
reach out to. There will be a presentation for the Council of Government Groups.
Yeah,
So
okay.
we'll be, after sending this email, we'll be in front of all of these municipal leaders again. So that will
Okay.
be a good touch point. And then after that, I'm not sure what the next touch point will be. And that's
Okay.
probably where we'll need to think a little bit more. In terms of what I could use from this subcommittee eventually as an idea of what the different targeted messages we might want to be getting out.
Mhm.
We're going to
Okay.
want to do some kind of outreach to elected leaders, some kind of outreach to history professionals, but helping kind of group and list out who the other outreach we might want to be doing on a regular basis would be very helpful.
So both identifying the groups, the kind of like segments of the constituency, and then what are the different messages that we want to be highlighting for each of those segments?
Yeah,
Is
and
that right?
yeah, and eventually putting together helping to put together a list of who those people are.
Yeah. And that's kind of on my agenda a little bit today, is figuring out, because one of the things that we had, I think we're sort of looking here at this sort of second goal of, and I was thinking in particular about identifying some of the contact lists for doing this outreach, since that's something we said we would
Sorry, I
do.
didn't read that far.
No, it's fine. I think it's a lot of these things are all interrelated. So, separating things out is sometimes a bit artificial. I mean, meeting with legislators and stuff is potentially creating community-based structure. So I don't know. Okay, so developing messaging. And then determining outreach lists. So, I think this is something that we can probably do a little work on today. And I would like to invite our commissioners who are here today to think about I think the reason that each of us is on the subcommittee is we each have connections in sort of different segments of the population who are interested in the 250th potentially. So I'd like to draw on our expertise today to just sort of identify what are the different sort of contact lists that we already know of in our own work that we can utilize to begin getting these messages out. So I'll put the CLHO's email list in here on my part. What other lists have you folks got?
In library land, the CLA has an email list, and there are many others for
Okay, yeah,
contacting librarians of various kinds. Like there's one for academic librarians and one for children's librarians.
Okay.
So there's like a bajillion listservs that
okay, yeah,
that will be useful. And then there's also like the usual kinds of like roundtables and stuff that librarians will go to and like physically share brochures or get up and speak
Okay.
for 30 seconds about stuff.
yeah.
We're all,
Not necessarily right at this moment, but
Yeah.
eventually, maybe before the next meeting, could we ask for everybody to kind of enumerate exactly who those different lists are?
Yeah,
Because it'll be helpful for connecting, for example, education when they're trying to reach out to people.
yeah.
Help them know who the lists are that they can reach.
Are we developing like a master spreadsheet of these? Is that how, what would be the best way to get that? What form do you want to get that in, Cindy, so we can start kind of working on it? A spreadsheet with like the organization, like the actual, like how do you process for how do you email this list? If there's like an email list or a person that you send it to be sent out to the list. And then information about like in general, what the constituency is.
Yes, and I'll get that started and I'll think a little bit if there's anything else that we would
Yeah.
want to have. I'm wondering if we want to tag specific
Yeah.
organizations for, or specific lists for specific subcommittees, but maybe not. Maybe we just keep it broader.
That'll probably happen organically over time as well.
Yeah.
Is the Library Association different from the Library Consortium? Doug?
Yeah, the Library Consortium is the statewide purchasing agency.
Okay.
Essentially, we're not, there's a lot of overlap in
Okay.
terms of the libraries and the staff, but we'll definitely be roping them in.
Okay, so I just put them on here.
Yeah, CLC.
They
Just
get their-
anticipating
they do
that
the
that's-
library jobs list, right?
Yeah,
That's
and
them.
it
Okay,
follows a
yeah.
bunch of other things. Yeah.
Andy, were you?
I was thinking that we should probably be aware that as soon as we contact these organizations to say, you know, can we use your list, that
Yeah.
many of these are the most likely also partners and co-conspirators for a lot of the stuff. So it probably
Right.
is going to, I'm just sort of flagging that this, what seems
Yeah.
like kind of a bureaucratic thing of let's get the email list together, is probably actually going to really make much more robust the work of this commission. And we might want to be ready to say, like I was thinking, like the Gilder Lerman Center at Yale has a very
Yeah.
active email list, which is I think is national, but has a, you know, is heavily weighted towards Connecticut. And they are likely to sponsor events, I bet, around
Yeah.
this. And so as soon as we say, hey, you know, do you want to share this notice? I think then they're going to say yes. And here's some events we
Yeah.
want to collaborate on. And that'll probably happen in the same conversation.
Yeah.
We should be ready for it.
The
Yeah.
floodgates will be opened.
Precisely.
Yeah, and we could develop some language that's just kind of like, you know, we're interested in, you know, activating you as a partner in helping spread the word about these things. We would welcome your other ideas for how we can work effectively together, and like, here's the mechanism for doing so, or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think maybe we need to have that mechanism. You know, we were sort of a little bit loose about it before, like, well, you get an
Yeah.
auto email that says, well, you know, here's the meeting and we'll get back to you in a couple months. But I think once you've called,
Yeah.
you know, a point person at these organizations,
Yeah.
we may actually need something a little more robust than we just
Yeah.
set up for the emails.
Okay.
We are almost at the point where we have that database resource and a planning guide to share. And I anticipate we'll be there in the next 10 days or so. So I think that might be part of the message that we're able to share out.
That's
Wonderful.
fantastic, Cindy. I think
That's
that
great news.
that is substantial enough.
Great. Done.
Hey, Amherst, I have 3 lists that I could share with you.
Great.
One is just our general SHPO contact list, and it is a weird amalgamation of practitioners and organizations, and I think it's going to
Yeah.
have a lot of overlap with your list because it includes grant recipients and such.
Yeah.
But we also have, and I think this is just, it's a state managed and provided list. So Cindy, you might already have it, but it's the list of legislators and their aides.
Okay.
And then the third one is for the Washington, Rochambeau, Connecticut portion of the trail. And that doesn't necessarily list all sites on the trail, but people who have been active in regular meetings in the organization in general.
So this is like organizations, sites on the trail,
Yeah.
those who have been active in its work.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yes, great. Okay. I mean, there's the CTH email list, right? Right. I mean, including things like recipients of operating support grants, which is like a huge group that hits a lot of cultural organizations across this, like almost every cultural organization in the state. So So I'm gonna kind of pop that on there.
You know, I thought of another list that I could easily get
Yeah.
access to. It's a huge list. It's anyone who signs up for the Connecticut CT visitor tourism emails.
Oh, yeah. That'll be a great one. I'm sorry, there are things in the chat that I am missing. Last Green Valley.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the National Heritage Corridor on either side of the state.
Yeah.
Who,
The
Lois-
Housatonic one?
Yeah, the Housatonic's mostly Mass, but it's got like 9 Connecticut
Yeah.
towns. West Green Valley is like mostly Connecticut and it's got like 4
Yeah.
Mass towns. So, yeah, I have connections with both of them. And I think most people know Lois here, I think.
Tonic Valley, is that what it's called? Heritage Corridor?
I'll get the name.
Okay, so what we were kind of knowing what we're talking about. Jonathan or Merle, do either of you have sort of groups that you know of or groups that you don't see represented here? I mean, I think there are already several lacunae that you might, that you either know of or that you would want to add to this list. I think we're thinking about this as outreach in the broadest possible way.
Right. So the disability community is not very organized in terms of like centralized email lists. So
Fine, yeah.
I can get information to you later on a couple of sort of statewide nonprofit organizations that if you get to them, they can reach out to or like statewide nonprofit like alliances.
Yeah.
They can get out to a broad range of the nonprofit organizations that are part of those alliances. And I think that'll be the best bang for our buck, and I can get that information to you soon.
Okay, great. Yeah. Is that, and that's specifically for the disability community, or are you thinking more like the Connecticut Alliance of Nonprofits sort of?
Well, it is like the Connecticut Nonprofit Alliance, but they have within that they have a subsection that is disability related.
Great.
And so we can craft the message, you know, that we're aiming to reach out to those specific groups. They can help with that.
Great. We can put them on there more generally, because I think they also have sort of, I mean, they would have a robust list of a lot of different nonprofits kind of serving a lot of different communities.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's also, I think it's called the Connecticut Cross Disability Lifespan Alliance. And some of that might be overlap, but those are the two groups that I'm thinking of that can help reach out to a lot of others.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, I would have to see about what groups would make sense. I'm not familiar with specific groups in Connecticut that are identity-based or community-based that would fit on that, but I'm sure I can dig around and find out and we'll get some links.
Great. I mean, I think we can just sort of make it like perhaps a task between now and the next meeting is to do some brainstorming about this. Everyone has access to this document. So if we want to just sort of make a quick and dirty list in here, and then as Cindy provides kind of the framework for the spreadsheet or whatever other format this document might come in, then we can use that time perhaps between the September meeting and the October meeting to start filling in that actual information once we know what the information we're trying to capture is. Does that make sense? Okay. I'm thinking about, I mean, the other thing to do is perhaps identify some constituencies that we would like to find, you know, some sort of good points of contact for, whether they're email lists or organizations that may have outreach lists. Certainly, I'm not seeing the tribal communities represented here, so I think that that's something that we'd want to think about. Wondering, we had talked about on the history side, there's certainly the Association for the Study of Connecticut History, and the Connecticut Coalition. I think it's for history. CCH. Does New England Archivists have like a Connecticut group?
No,
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 okay,
I've been trying to get that going. There is an archives group. I can,
okay,
if you make a note of the Connecticut Archives Group,
Okay.
Meg Wren runs it.
okay,
They have a listserv.
okay.
I'll also go ahead and add onto the spreadsheet. I don't think we need to write it all out, but I think every organization represented by a member of the commission should
Yeah,
be part of it.
great. Okay,
And I'd also like to say that we should be thinking about some civics organizations.
yeah,
I'm sure the Secretary of the State's office will be happy to help, but I think some other people who can help get civics messaging out.
yeah. Great. Do people have other thoughts in terms of constituencies or groups that are not yet sort of represented on this list that we want to brainstorm about or reach out to other commissioners about?
I would think that like something like the Connecticut chapter of AARP, make sure that we're getting to the older community, retired community,
Yeah.
just as a start.
In that same manner, the veterans groups
Mhm.
Yeah,
that we can
good
reach.
call, Mike.
I mean, I know these are not all, some of them are on the league mailing list, but it may have coverage in some of these other things, but I know there are a lot of sort of ethnic heritage groups around the state that might be worth, kind of like developing out that list a little bit more fully.
There's probably going to be a bajillion, right, over
Yeah.
time. So, I mean, I don't know, the perfect is the enemy of the good. So we can,
Yeah.
with all
Just
of
keep-
these
Right.
groups, we'll definitely develop some sort of flow and be able to crank it
I was
forward.
thinking of the DRSOs, but they're covered
Yeah.
by us. I was also thinking also the arts, reaching artists too with through Liz camera.
Yeah, we could think of the Arts Alliance, the direct, I'm trying to be good about acronyms, organizations, CT Office of the Arts. Yeah. Am I getting that right? DRSOs. Oh, it's designated? Oh. What, I don't even know what it means. That's great. Yeah. We have the Connecticut Storytelling Center. Is another one. And they work with a lot of kind of like performers and folks who do like historical storytelling and things like that. Okay, great. So a task for between now and the next meeting is to revisit this portion of the action plan and start identifying either constituencies that we don't see represented here, also some of the specific groups and or lists that we could utilize to reach out to them. And then when we have the sort of spreadsheet template with information that we would want about each of these sort of modes of contact from Cindy, then we can start populating it hopefully for October. Great. Anybody have anything else on that? Okay, thank you for your contributions and for your work in the intervening months to flesh this out even further. I really appreciate it. Okay, I wanted to also offer an opportunity. I know there's been a lot of work that's been happening, and some of it's been happening kind of like in the work that the commission itself has been doing through things like site visits. And I'm sure we'll get updates on this at our next larger meeting, but I also wanted to share a little bit about some of the work that I've been doing at the League, that we've been doing at the League, but I also am assuming that there are others in this group who may have things that they want to share back that probably relate directly to our action plan, things that you may already have been doing or that you have in the works at your own organizations and roles that relate to the work of the subcommittee and or the broader commission. So I wanted to just make a little space for that conversation, because I think that, I mean, some of it is just thinking like we've done some of these things a little bit already. And I can actually stop the share because I don't know that we need to be looking at the action plan. Oh, community colleges, great point, Doug, please add it. Native American Heritage Advisory Council, wonderful. Thank you, everyone. This is great. So I just wanted to share that the League hosted a program yesterday. Cindy was kind enough to present a little bit on what the 250th Commission in the state has been doing. We had like 200 people register for this virtual program, and we had it was like 136 people live at the highest point of attendance. And one of the things that Cindy did in this program, which I thought was really wonderful and just made it go in this completely different direction than I was expecting, was sort of share both the guiding values of the commission and then also the different themes that we're focusing on in the state, and having folks in the group sort of brainstorm and share their ideas live in the meeting about events and people and places that can connect to these themes. I'm sure that Cindy is still in the process of going through everything that came through in the chat yesterday and adding it to her like Jamboard whiteboard thing that she was utilizing in the session. But I just wanted to share that there was an incredible richness of ideas, and I think a really diverse set of different kinds of places and people and events that was shared at that meeting. So to me, it was just incredibly encouraging and really was a great indicator of the enthusiasm and ferment that's already happening locally across the state. So I'm hopeful. We're going to send a follow-up email to everyone who registered for that program and encourage them to do things like sign up for the 250th Commission email list that Connecticut Humanities is managing, and offer them other points of action to continue this enthusiasm. But I just kind of wanted to share that with the group because it was really, for me, it was just like so exciting to see. And I know that Cindy probably has a ton of follow-up work to do as a result because she got a lot of stuff from people. Kathy.
I was just wondering, was it recorded? Because I've actually had a bunch of people contact me today and were like, oh, I missed it. What happened?
Yes.
Okay.
Let me, I will, I don't know if it's up on our YouTube channel yet, but Emily's usually pretty good about getting things up pretty quickly. So I can certainly share the link to that with this group.
Thank you. The other thing that I've heard now from 3 people is I get the question, well, what is the state doing? And I talk about the commission and my subcommittee. And I just wanted to point out, as something I was going to bring to the larger group, that, you know, while I know we've gone with this community-based ground up kind of approach, there is also a lot of people yearning for the state taking the lead and having some ownership over activities as well. So I just don't want that to get lost too.
And I think in the meantime, we can send them to the commission's website because we are slowly starting to populate it with a lot of stuff. I'm still trying to figure out how to make that stuff most accessible on the homepage, because I think people are not going deep through it. But over time, we'll improve on that. And but the themes are all there, resource lists are there. Our meeting materials, which are excessive, but they're there. So people can start poking around and all of that.
So are you are you encouraging Kathy, like there to be like a thing that the state is sort of doing that is like visible, like more visible or concrete, I guess? I mean, because we
Yeah.
got questions at the program that were similar that like, you know, I think there is kind of a lack of clarity in a lot of ways about like what the commission is doing. Like we're not organizing events, like, and I think that saying that at the outset is probably really important. And people is kind of an aha moment for people. Oh, you're not running the major celebration of this. Or at least that's not currently in our plans, right? The plan is to empower organizations to kind of do this work on their own. So I think that, you know, I think this can, inform some of our messaging too. Like one of the questions that I remember we got yesterday, Cindy, was like from someone who like runs it was like Indian arts and cultural group, and they're like, we want to put on a performance. How do we do that? And it's like, just do it. You know, sounds great. So I think in a lot of ways it's like, well, what, you know, do we need to like ask permission? And I think, you know, so I think that clarifying, I think to me, this starts to begin to clarify some of the messaging. You were talking about this earlier, Cindy, about that actually kind of needs to go out in general to the wider community, connecting them to the values. If we're doing approvals for events, you know, understanding what that process is, or like, you know, the sign up, you know, the things that we were talking about at the last commission meeting, you know, getting the imprimatur of the commission on your event. But like, don't hold back and wait for us to do it for you, right?
I think so. And I think maybe that is the next message that goes out via the 250th e-blast. Like right now, what we're doing is encouraging you to use these themes as talking points to kind of think about what you might be wanting to do in 2026, 2027. And then the next step is going to be releasing the guidelines for what is a commission promoted activity.
Yeah.
And then the next step, I think, will be some kind of more rigorous guidelines for CTH funded grants that are related to the 250th. Because I think that's where we're going to be most strict in terms of
right,
how much we're expecting them to do to get funding for a program and the like rigorous scholarship and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that Cindy, you put that very well just now, and I think this should probably be front and center on the web page even now. That just says something like, in the spirit of participatory democracy, it is the vision of the Connecticut Sesquicentennial Commission that rather than having the state plan one event, we are encouraging organizations and individuals around the state to make meaning of this anniversary in their own way. So do not wait to hear from us about the event we are organizing. Start thinking now about the event you will organize, what your organization can do, what your community can do. Stay tuned. There will be support. There will be funding forthcoming for your events, but the time is now for you to plan your event. We are here to support, you know, hundreds of events and commemorations around the state over the years to come. That is the role of this commission. I don't think that I've heard that said explicitly. I think that's sort of been the gathering consensus of the commission, but I think that needs to be something like, I think that needs to be the second thing people read on the website after the bolded text now. And it needs to be the thing that we say to every organization when we get in touch.
Yeah.
And it should be the thing even that is in the auto reply email, you know, because people are like, I think people are asking, how can I help? I think that
Instead
is
of what
is
can I
lurking in the
do
frame
on
of
my
their
own? Yeah.
question. What, like, what can I sign up to do? And I think they need to hear, you can sign up to do whatever you think you needs doing, but we're not going to come to you with, we're not going to come to you with the event that you're going to help organize. You're going to come to us with the event that you want our help organizing. Anyway, I think that should be the first and main thing people hear from us for the next year.
And aren't we glad we were recording that? Because I thought you put that very nicely, Andy. I'm like, I'm gonna go back and crib from that for my email.
I refer to all of these recordings very often. You all have little nuggets of wisdom.
That said, now I want to totally undercut what I just said. Say that I do think inevitably, I mean, I do think that we should be clear as a commission that inevitably there is going to be a signal event.
Yeah.
It's probably going to have fireworks. It's probably going to be on July 4th. Yeah. And knowing that that's going to happen, it probably is not totally premature to give some, just to know that that's going to happen, and to know that we don't want that to be totally disconnected from everything else that's happening.
Yeah.
So there's gonna, I mean, the governor's gonna say something before that event, and other people are gonna say something before that event. There's gonna be words spoken before the fireworks. And I think that we should see that as in our purview as a commission, rather than like ceding that totally to whoever usually does the fireworks. And just be, know that we should probably try to come up with a way to reflect all of these individual events that we're going to support to a greater or lesser degree, and I don't know what that looks like. But I think that there should be something from these hundreds of events that we're hoping to encourage that, somehow is reflected within the fireworks.
Yeah, well, I think that becomes the two-way street. So as people are reaching out to us saying, this is our event, we respond back and say, would you like to bring a piece of that to our event?
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder if there's a way to like have some kind of showcase that's like accompanying whatever that like signal event is that you're gesturing at. I think that would be a great thing for this group to think about.
And that may be something that we can't do until we know what all of the other events look like. But I just think we should have in our, while I've just given my big speech about how we're not doing stuff, you're doing stuff, I think we should know that, we actually are going to have to do something, and have in our minds that it's some sort of whatever, maybe it's a big tent with, before the event where people talk about what they did all year, or, who knows what it is. But I just think we need to remember that we're going to have to do that too.
I 100% agree. And I do think, something you said early on about, well, we probably know it's going to be fireworks. We probably know it's going to be July 4th. I don't think it hurts on setting a date. So this way we don't end up with, conflicting events at the same time.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. I take that for granted that it's July 4th, that it's fireworks in Hartford on July 4th. But if it is, we should announce that. And if it's not, we should figure out what it is. But I just think we don't want to cede that. I am proud of how thoughtful we're trying to be about recognizing the many things that the anniversary means to people. And I think that we would like to make sure that that's reflected in the fireworks in Hartford on July 4th, some way or another. So it's not like, so it has something to do with the.
So it's not completely disconnected and having a completely different message than everything else that's been happening.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that if there's going to be if there's going to be one event that everybody in the state knows about, it's great. There's going to be 100 events that every little community, that's fantastic. I think that's a beautiful vision, and I totally support it. But if there's going to be one event that everyone knows about, that event certainly has to be on message too.
Yeah.
And so I will say, yesterday this came up with Denise, because we were talking about there will be some kind of big event. And she mentioned the idea that maybe it's not one big event, maybe it's 2 or 3, looking at all of the major metropolitan areas in Connecticut, something in Bridgeport, something in New Haven, something in Hartford. And then, of course, the question is what happens to a New London or, and then all of a sudden we're looking at a dozen big events. So do we feel, does this subcommittee feel like one big event in Hartford is the way to go and just put all of our eggs in one basket? Or should we be thinking more about dividing into some of the regionalism that already exists?
Well, I think that that's important for the funding that comes from Connecticut Humanities to make sure that the commission is funding meaningfully robust events across the state. I mean, this is not news to us. We know that this is something, I mean, Connecticut Humanities does this already. So I hope that that base is covered by the grant making process, that we're going to support substantial events across the state. I don't think we need to try to organize, you know, in this way. I think that events in major events in Hartford, New London, what like that starts getting pretty unwieldy unless we have a franchisable model for everybody's fireworks. And we just acknowledge the fact that there is going to be one big event in every town. It's the fireworks on July 4th weekend. And we have a kit or a box or a roving gang of representatives or whatever that can make the fireworks in every town the thing that I was just saying the Hartford thing might be. Even though I still think the Hartford thing's going to be the big thing and we should remember it.
I think so too, because it's still the capital city, but I think if you could get buy-in, and I love the idea of hitting the big metros, but I'm also very sensitive to our quiet corner and everything else. I would go with more a county approach. So like, Torrington for the northwest corner and Willimantic for the northeast corner, and maybe do a county approach, identify the largest city, and they take the lead that follows this model, their protocol that's been developed.
I'm listening to all of this and all I'm really hearing is huge blowout in Andy's backyard on July 4th.
We do that 7 nights a week, man. Come on.
I hope your backyard's accessible, Andy. I'm just saying.
Well, I mean, this seems like
Everybody's welcome, always. We make sure of it.
This seems like a great conversation to bring to the larger commission, right? I mean, Cindy, I think this is something where everybody's input will really be valuable. I think there is some kind of it being a state thing. There's a part of me that's just kind of like, it's simpler in a lot of ways to help control the messaging on one event, right? That the governor's at and, whatever legislators can speak at, and they, Denise and Jason can speak at, and, whatever else. But it seems like there are a lot of different ways that we could think about this. And it's early enough to think about the pros and cons of each and how maybe we want to do both of that. Maybe we want to have the, make your 250th fireworks in your municipality, whatever size it is, be connected to this bigger thing. And then also have, some kind of thing that the governor can, be at and be happy about. I don't know.
It may be that I understand that we don't know how much money there actually is
right
yet in but once there is a pool of money and a grant, it seems like part of this should be properly dealt with when we figure out how the grant making process is going to work, because I think it might make sense to say that we are interested in funding as many events as possible, to supporting events that sort of touch everybody in every community that they affiliate with, where there's interest. But also we want to have 6 regional events that are more substantial, and that's going to be part of the grant making. And maybe some of the nudging that the engagement committee does is saying, that's cool. Here's the 8 organizations in, whatever, in New Haven County that seem to be building up towards a more robust thing. Why don't you come together and try to plan a signal event that Connecticut Humanities is going to give you extra money for? And that way every region gets, all the not little, but all the local events we're talking about, a kind of tent pole at the county level. And then the big fireworks in Hartford, that is the thing where, we labor over the governor's speech for a while, and then he says what he wants to say as his prerogative.
Yeah, I also, on the money point, I think that there are a couple of things there, like, one, the grant making will inform it, but I think having a vision sort of as a commission for, the possibilities that we think could help us raise money. Also, I think to sort of Cindy's role in all of this would also be good. And I think, taking that into account as we're thinking about what this looks like, what are we going to be able to trade on most effectively to kind of get people to open up their checkbooks.
Yeah, and I will say that's what started the conversation yesterday.
It's the big party, right? I don't know.
The big party, and what are people going to get by giving us $100,000? What will they get at the big party?
Yeah.
So.
Great. Yeah, so I don't know what the agenda for the October meeting is starting to look like, but if there can be space for having this conversation as a larger commission, I think it makes really good sense. Okay. Other thoughts and input on this? I'm aware of the time, and I think it'd be great if we could wrap up early, because I've kind of hit most of the things that I wanted to hit for this meeting. I think we've actually made even more progress than I was anticipating, and have some really good concrete steps. Andy.
I want someone to give $100,000 to buy free lemonade and iced tea for everybody at the event who agrees to sit down at a table for 5 minutes and say what America means to them to a stranger. Not that exactly, but something that's like, there's free drinks. You got to talk to somebody. And we're going to serve it. The drinks are at the table. And the whole thing's sponsored by X. I think that I mentioned that just to say, I think there's ways of promoting the sort of seriousness of purpose and interactive diversity of viewpoints that we imagine is going to be the hallmark of our commission's work, that is compatible with fireworks and could easily cost $100,000 a pop. We could have those at we could have 6 of those regionally, where there's subsidized food and drink for people who want to have a conversation with neighbors before the fireworks.
That's great. And I wonder if there are ways that we can, that also brings to mind, I don't know, the America's Invitation thing, which I, have concerns about, but what if we were to do something like that right on the state level and turn it into an actual substantive collecting project where we capture people's thoughts about what America means, or whatever the question is, in a standardized format, working with a repository that will steward this stuff in one form or another. That would be another thing that you could use for the fundraising, but it also creates a legacy, and something for the historical record that is perhaps useful down the road.
I can just give 2 quick, I know we're kind of out of time, 2 quick updates. One, at the commission meeting, a couple months ago, last month, showed you the resource database that we are building. We now have 200 items in it. I work with Cleo Quotap. He's got a nice theme on it. We're getting feedback internally. We'll send it out to this group too to get feedback. Those are for historical resources. So content, so collections, articles, things like that. We are also exploring doing project content, Amherst, you have the resource page for you. What are resources for museums that are more programmatic as opposed to content about history. So we're looking at that too. So I know Cindy and I have talked about specific outreach to commissioners for ideas. And the other thing that came out of the CLHO session yesterday was a place for people to come and talk about ideas and talk about history and projects and things like that. So we're exploring using a software that we use for public communication. It's a mashup between LinkedIn and Facebook. You have threads, you can have an account, people can respond to things. So creating a dedicated 250 topics, we're not sure what we're going to call it, place that's public so people can read it. And if they want to join, they can join the conversation as well. So we're exploring those 2 things. And I think that second part kind of hits this subcommittee pretty closely about, offering that as an option for people to join in the conversation as well around 250. So those are 2 things that are on the horizon that should be hopefully in place by October, if not close to being in place for the next big commission meeting. But I'll give updates to the subcommittee as we meet as well.
Wonderful. Thanks, Mike. Yeah, I mean, I think that, at the league, we're thinking about, maybe there are like some quarterly programs where we can just have a chat, and just get that group of people together because it was so generative. And, other people can join as they want to, but just sort of have that. And then it's a moment of sort of feedback to the commission. And I think that's also something to think about in each of our respective sort of networks and circles. Are there ways that we want to kind of do that as a part of our own work in our own organizations, to help create space for those conversations, and also be a way of continuing that. I think it's one of the things in our action plan, like continuing to be responsive to community input, creating opportunities for community feedback on on the 250th. So excellent. Okay. Any other business that people want to discuss at this meeting?
Just a very brief thing. I took notes as secretary. I will be sending those out today. If you could get me any notes, changes, whatever, it'll be one page. Get those to me by tomorrow, and then I can get them to Cindy / the commission for posting to tweet.
Great. Are you outlining the kind of like task assignments, or should I go over those right now before we adjourn? Let's kind of like
Definitely.
what we want to do between now and the next meeting.
Yeah, let's definitely go over those again.
Okay. So between now and the next meeting, we're asking members of this subcommittee to take a look at the action plan and those bullet points that we added, to come up with ideas for constituencies, email lists, groups, contact lists, organizations, points of contact that can help us develop a more robust outreach list, that can be utilized by us, but also by the wider commission, to activate things as needed and push out information and share and get input and feedback. Between now and the next meeting, I am going to be I'm going to develop a schedule for fielding responses to our email, our subcommittee email. And I will share that before our next meeting. I will be the person responding to those emails between now and the next meeting, and we will set up a mechanism for changing that, from month to month, to spread the work around. And Cindy will be prepared to show us a little bit about how to use groups to efficiently go through those emails. I will also send a link to the 250th program that the league hosted yesterday with Connecticut Humanities, so everyone can watch that recording if they so desire. And I will also send an email to the folks who have expressed interest so far in our subcommittee, just to let them know that we've received their interest and we're looking forward to working with them, and that we plan on, and sharing information about the November meeting of this subcommittee, and that they'll be invited to join that. Sound good? And I can share that email template with all of you, and then, I don't know if you want to like have eyes on it before I send it out. No? Okay. Try and crib from some of the things that were said in this meeting that were so eloquent. Excellent. I think that's all I have in terms of tasks on my list. Is there any that I've missed? I think the main call to action for the group is to go and start thinking about what those contact and outreach lists are going to look like, and giving some shape to that. Right, that is all I have. Does anyone have anything else they want to discuss with the subcommittee before we adjourn? Thank you all for being here. It's always a pleasure to work with you and to hear all of your wonderful ideas. Have a great day.
You too.
Thanks, Doug, for taking notes.
Yep.
Thanks, Cindy and Mike, for all your work. Have a great afternoon, everyone.